right, here we go. This is the first round of Unified's Standard for day 2 of the World Magic Cup. I'm Rashad Miller here with Zach Hill, and we're about to watch Team Chile versus Team South Africa. Right here on the left, we see Felipe Tapia, and on the right, Craig Leach. Now, we have the deck list here, and I'm going to let Zach Hill take it away and tell you exactly what they got going on here.
Now, again, Leach is playing what essentially amounts to a junk Aristocrats deck, principally black-white, splashing for Varls, the Scar-Scribed, and Garrick Relentless, along with, of course, Voice of Resurgence. On the other hand, Tapia Bechera playing a very aggressive Jund list.
And speaking of aggressive, we have a Cavernous Souls, which is obviously naming Zombie, and Grave Zombie, Gravecrawler, coming in. 4-2, bringing Craig Leach down to 18. Okay, second land and a second Gravecrawler.
Right, yeah, and a really incredibly aggressive start from Tapia Bechera. We're seeing Leach here, hand chock full of Blood Artist. He's got Garrick Relentless and Obsidat, but he is not going to really be able to handle those Grave Colors. You don't really want to block with a Skursdog High Priest. Blood Artist obviously will stem the bleeding if he can put anything in front of that. But right now, these Grave Crawlers just kind of going to town on Leach's life total.
Yeah, he 2 attacks. Offered the trade, quote unquote. Obviously, not going to trade with the Skursdog High Priest. So Craig Leach takes 4. He's going to go down to 14. And now a little head scratch from Craig Leach.
Yeah, Tapia Bechera missed his 3rd land drop, but it's really hard to stare down 2 Gravecrawlers and a Lotleth Troll when you have 0 creatures with toughness. He also isn't able to find additional lands, which means he's not going to be able to get his Garrick Relentless online. Tragic Slip doesn't really have any good targets right now because obviously if you're targeting Lotleth Troll, you'd love for that to hit, but if your opponent can discard even a single creature, it's not going to accomplish very much.
Exactly. Craig Leach has to settle for a Blood Artist on his turn, passes back to Felipe. See what Felipe can come up with. He has his 3rd land for the turn, and he has a Lotleth Troll to go along with his 2 Gravecrawlers.
And he's holding on a pair of Dreg Manglers and Abrupt Decay and Tragic Slip. What he's thinking about here is whether he wants to remove either the Blood Artist or the High Priest. Very likely the High Priest in case Leach is able to play a 1-drop and a sack outlet and start making demons.
Yeah, looks like the consideration here is a Tragic Slip, but a little bit of a pump fake and decides just to offer the trades first.
So he's deliberately not casting Dreg Mangler and attacking with it. I assume he figures, okay, look, I've got 6 points of damage on the table. I don't really need to add to my clock.
Tragic Slip takes out the Blood Artist, and not before the Blood Artist can get one last say in the matter.
Well, obviously, he's leaving up 2 mana for Abrupt Decay, but unfortunately, Cavern of Souls, while it can produce green for zombies, it doesn't quite produce green for Abrupt Decay. So Tapia Bechera really using the only removal spell he had access to try and prevent that Blood Artist from stacking up.
Still no 3rd land for Craig Leach. Picked up a Cartel Aristocrats, which he has the mana to play, and he's visibly distraught about his position here.
Yeah, there are definitely some draws that you could deal with 2 lands, but not this particular draw from Tapia Bechera. Right now he's thinking, okay, his option is to cast Aristocrat. He can also leave open a mana for Tragic Slip, which becomes a little more reasonable if he has to block with a Skursdog High Priest. Because if that dies, certainly Tapia Bechera is not going to be able to discard 14 creatures to Lotleth Troll.
All right, so Craig Leach still debating. He wants to play a spell because you have to play spells in order to play Magic, and he has a choice between Blood Artist or Cartel Aristocrat. He also has Tragic Slip, which just doesn't do anything. But it looks like he's going to pass the turn and maybe use a Tragic Slip on Felipe Tapia's turn.
Yeah, I think he's planning right now on blocking with a High Priest. I mean, he can also represent additional tricks. You don't really want to use Tragic Slip on one of those Grave Crawlers, but essentially Tapia Bechera is attacking for lethal damage right here because who knows how many creatures he has in his hand. You know, when your opponent, you see a 5-card hand, you have to assume that Lotleth Troll can hit you for lethal damage.
And that is a Dreg Mangler, one of the alternate art types. I'm not sure, that may be Friday Night Magic or some interesting way you can get that beautiful looking Dreg Mangler.
Some kind of tricked out promo. So Leech is trying to decide what he wants to block right here. The play might be to block Gravecrawler and say, okay, if you have a creature, you've got me. Again, he's wanting that Skurzdog High Priest to die. The other thing he can do is, you know, block the Dreg Mangler and try to preserve his life total as much as he possibly can.
So it sounds like we have our first result. On the back table, Roberto Castillo went Arbel into Flinthoof Boar, into the hastiest creature of them all, Thundermaw Hellkite, to win game 1 over Andrew Wright.
So yeah, he's flashing the Tragic Slip, blocking Lotleth Troll, taking away 2 damage from the Gravecrawler, which can't be recast this turn. So it looks like Leech is going to stay alive at least through this attack.
So Falconwrath Aristocrat is going to be discarded to the Lotleth Troll. I don't believe Felipe Tapia has played a land this turn. So if he has a swamp, he would be able to play Gravecrawler. Not sure if he has that swamp.
That's true. Right now, it looks like his hand, 1 more remaining Dreg Mangler, a Falconwrath Aristocrat, which he currently doesn't have the mana to cast. Again, the Cavern of Souls naming zombie right now.
Craig Leach seen enough. No third land. Felipe Tapia leads 1-0 over Craig Leach. Looking to ignite your competitive spark? Take your game to a Grand Prix and see how you fare against the best players in your region, as well as top visiting Magic pros. Upcoming Grand Prix include Warsaw, Oakland, Kitakyushu, and Prague. For more information, visit wizards.com/Grand Prix. Are you going to Kitakyushu?
I don't think I'll be able to make that one, unfortunately. Although Japan's one of my favorite destinations for Magic-related travel.
One of my favorite as well.
Oh, yeah.
I miss going there as often as we used to. But it looks like now we are going to head to the back table and watch Roberto Castillo versus Andrew Wright. You'll probably see another fast one. This is a red-green on red-green. I don't know how mirror matchy it is, but there's going to be a lot of creatures going into the red zone and not a lot of life to be spared.
Yeah, I think this is maybe even a 60-card mirror match. At least out of the main deck. So Domri Raid superiority and playing first are incredibly relevant right there.
So these players looks like they are still in the midst of sideboarding. Do we have their? We do have their deck list, so we can tell you what we think they might be doing. Now, Castillo is up a game in this matchup, so keep that in mind.
So if you're Castillo, I think you definitely want Zealous Conscripts. Really, really good against both Hellrider and Thundermaw Hellkite. I can see arguments for all of Huntmaster and Bonfire the Damned and Flames of the Firebrand, although Flames doesn't really give you a good rate in this matchup because it's very hard to get more than 1 creature. On the other hand, Conscript's a blowout, Bonfire gives you an edge the longer the game goes, and Huntmaster of the Fells allows you to preserve your life total while picking off mana creatures and getting some size on the board. On the other hand, the less aggressive you make your deck, the less you can take advantage of the ability to play first. Out of
Andrew
Wright's sideboard, I expect to see the Gruul War Chant, which seems utterly incredible in this matchup. Volcanic Strength also helps you attack through, and he's got 1 copy of Zealous Conscripts to take advantage, like we were saying, in the exact same way Castillo can. I don't like bringing in removal in this matchup because you're not going to get a good rate on it. You're going to spend 3 mana to kill 2 mana creatures and so on. So I think I would go for the Falter plan, bring in War Chant and Volcanic Strength, and try to simply attack through my opponent's blockers in a way that also increases my clock. I don't like being reactive in a matchup with this many haste creatures.
All right, Roberto Castillo, 25 years old, 0 pro points. Not a lot of experience. We alluded to that earlier. His Grand Prix record, 4-4, 50%. So not a lot of data on him, but he's doing great here at the Magic World Cup.
And that's one of the great things about seeing this tournament is that you get to meet all kinds of players that you haven't really seen on this stage before, but that are performing at an extremely high level. And who knows, he might be next year's Rookie of the Year, along with his compatriot.
Well, does this count? These points don't count for which year do these, because he's getting poor points now.
Right.
So this is for the upcoming Rookie of the Year competitors.
Certainly putting yourself in a good position.
Let's take a look at Andrew Wright's stats, 36 years old, and he's got a lot of zeros down here. No pro points, no pro tours, no Grand Prix, so, you know, he's out here having fun.
Hey, man, well, he's doing pretty good despite that lack of experience. And at the same time, one of the things that's got to be hard is, you know, all of a sudden you're used to playing your local Friday Night Magic, and now there's hundreds of thousands of people watching this broadcast. You're under the lights. You have everybody in the room sort of looking over your shoulder. Kind of grueling.
Doesn't seem like he was too affected by that.
No, it doesn't. I think he's just ready to play Magic Attack with Flinthoofed Boars, which, to be fair, is one of my favorite things to do on the planet Earth. So
wait, which one?
Attack with Flinthoofed Boars.
Oh, I like playing Elvish Mystics.
You like playing Elvish Mystics a little bit better?
Yeah, just a little bit better.
You don't have withdrawals from Llanowar elves?
Hey, they are all in the same family. They are in the Rashad Miller Druid Commander deck family.
I was going to say, you just like them because they're druids that you can cast Seton Crozen Protector in the second turn of the game.
Just keep printing cards like Llanowar Elves and change the name, even just a little bit. Llanowar Elf with just one L, I'm fine with it. I'll play it. My deck just gets cooler and cooler.
Are the Findhorn elves elf druids as well, or are they simply elves?
Of course they're elf druids.
Man. The great creature type update doing wonders for your commander deck.
You know what? And, you know, a little bit off topic, but we were, you know, Luis Scott Vargas and I and Marshall Sutcliffe, we were talking about some older draft formats. And one of the ones that came up was Onslaught Block.
Okay.
And recently on Magic Online, during one of, I believe, the Cube weeks, where they you know, the winning packs happen to be Onslaught packs, which meant that you could draft Onslaught.
Not bad.
Turns out that with the great creature update, a lot of those Amplify cards got a lot better. Let's just say there are a lot of human soldiers and human clerics and human anything. So when you play your Daru Stinger, which was a 4-drop soldier with Amplify, you know, you can reveal a whole bunch of humans now. He was just telling me how he played it and all of the cards in his hand lit up.
Well, I know what we're doing after this tournament ends.
Take a look at Andrew Wright's hand. It's got a lot of land. Looks like there's an Arbor Elf, and that might be that's a Gorklan Rampager.
So yeah, not an incredibly fast hand for Wright. On the other end, you've got to be excited about that Mizium Mortars. You've got 3 red mana to cast it, a lot of mana, and an accelerant. So clearly, any matchup where you're trying to flood the board with creatures, it's not bad to be able to deal 4 to all of the creatures your opponent controls.
It looks like Castillo has a little bit better curve with a Arbor Elf and a Hell Rider. It looks like he's getting somewhere else a little bit faster. Couldn't quite catch the rest of the cards. I know there was also a Keswick Wolf one for a little bit later in that game.
I'm about to check up, see if our spotters have managed to enter those hands right now. I'm getting informed that a PHP error has occurred. Okay, here we go. We've got showing player 2's hands, the one we've already seen. It's got the Arbor Elf, the Rampager, which you can totally hardcast, and Mortars. Castillo, Forest, Mountain, Arbor Elf, Flint of Boar, Hellrider, Zealous Conscripts. Far more aggressive of a hand, you have to say.
I think there's still some consideration as to if we're keeping.
I think if I were Wright, I'd be a little concerned about this hand.
I think he was a little bit concerned, but he did decide to keep, and we're leading off with the Arbor Elf.
If nothing else, you know, you can bolt your opponent's turn 1 elf and buy yourself a lot of time if you have to.
Dueling Arbor Elves we have on the battlefield, and Flames of the Firebrand picked up for Wright.
Okay, so it looks like Wright did bring in Flames of the Firebrand. While the rate isn't too good, you do get to pick off some of the elves, and you can kill things if you need to. So,
hey, and there you go. Picks off an elf and does too much damage. You know what? And every now and then you can pick off a couple of elves or an elf and, you know, a Flinthoof board that just isn't big enough yet.
All right, and I just said Castillo brought in Flames of the Firebrand. I meant Andrew Wright brought in Flames of the Firebrand to complement his Mizium Mortars.
We knew what you meant. Right, we knew what you meant.
The one that was cast.
Okay, and there is a Mizium Mortars. That's gonna talking about rates on taking creatures out. What do you think of it's just 2 mana to take out a 1-mana elf, but it's 4 damage.
Well, as the adage goes, thou shalt not suffer a bird to live. That applies to elves, too, with a little asterisk next to it. It really is true. Just bad things happen when you give your opponent extra mana. And both these players seem to be aware of that.
And there is a Flint Hoof Boar, your favorite creature. Red mana to give it haste. Attacks for 3. Android takes it. Goes down to 17. Castillo down to 16, thanks to the damage from the flames of the Firebrand and playing Stomping Grounds untapped.
All right, so now we see Wright having a Gorklan Rampager. This is very important because with that Volcanic Strength in his hand, he does not need to be sitting around without a target to cast it. Also brick walls the Flint Hoof Boar a little bit. No more removal to get it out of the way. So we're going to see Wright gain a little bit of initiative here. What we'll have to see next turn is if he decides to get it on the offensive with that Volcanic Strength. Different 4-drop coming out now for Castillo. He can decide either to play his own Rampager or a Hell Rider or the Huntmaster right here.
Oh, wow. So we also have another update. Looks like Felipe Tapia wins 2-0 over Craig Leach.
All right, so that was a relatively quick match, it seems like.
That zombie deck is no joke.
Yeah,
it
doesn't
can put
seem
out
like
some
it.
very fast starts.
And some very resilient starts, too, with Gravecrawler and Falkenrath Aristocrat and Geralf's Messenger all being very challenging to kill.
That deck does not fear a Supreme Verdict. Not that there were any in that matchup, but if there were.
Hypothetical Supreme Verdicts.
So Huntmaster of the Fells did come down for Castillo. We updated the wolf token. Looks like an old school wolf token, kind of spirited.
Yeah, I was going to say, kind of a spectral wolf.
And there is that Volcanic Strength. That's going to give the Rampager +2/+2, and most importantly, Mountain Walk.
Yeah, and that right there is a 3-turn clock. Castillo at 18 life, that's 18, 12, 6, and dead. So very important numbers game for him to play. That means Wright can buy himself a little bit of time, unless, of course, that Huntmaster starts flipping all kinds of crazy ways. But this Scavenging Ooze from Wright is going to ensure... Oh, sorry, no, Mizium Mortars.
Wow.
Taking out the Huntmaster, ensuring that that does not...
Now, the 6 toughness that the Gorklan Rampager has is also pretty efficient against red removal, but it's not that effective against a Zealous Conscripts, which is probably going to come down whenever Castillo gets his 5th land and turn the tables, as it were.
And that's exactly what Castillo is hoping to happen. He's able to keep deploying threats to the board. Huntmaster, huge. Obviously, the... Rampager, huge right here, but a 5th land would just end it right now for Castillo.
Right, considering his options. I'm sure one option is going to be attack, because this is a 2-turn clock that we're on right now.
Yeah, you certainly can't avoid attacking, given that you attacked last turn. Even keeping your creature back is not going to do anything against the conscript, so I think you have to say right now, all right, if you have conscripts, good for you. We've got Scavenging Ooze open, capable of gaining Wright a little bit of life, leaving open a mountain and no other green sources. So he's going ahead and gaining the life as quickly as he can just to make sure no shenanigans take place.
Well, also the 4 toughness is very relevant.
Also very important against cards like Searing Spear and the Flames of the Firebrand that we have already seen. One more Arbor Elf in Wright's graveyard, but not the mana to activate it right now.
Castillo, speaking of Arbor Elf, Castillo just picked up one. And he picked up all his cards because he didn't have an answer. He needed the 5th land to be able to Zealous Conscript the now 6/6 Gorklan Rampager. And we are now tied in that back table at 1 apiece.
My turn?
Dak Faden is the greatest thief in the multiverse. Follow his adventures in the Magic the Gathering comic series produced by IDW. A special promo card unique to the IDW comic series comes in each issue. Find out more about these comics at wizards.com/magic merchandise. So we are headed now to the middle table. And there we have Rodrigo Lopez versus Bruce Raw. They are fairly early in game 1. We told you a little bit earlier that they were being deck checked. So we're going to get to see a lot of magic from these 2 players.
They are. Bruce Raw being among the more incredible names that I have ever seen under the Feature Nash spotlight.
I can't wait to see what you can do with this name with your very colorful commentary.
And
I've been corrected by Brian David Marshall from the floor. The correct pronunciation of Bruce's last name is Raw.
That was beautiful. Okay, so we're seeing this blue-white-red mirror match. Looks like Raw has a lot more pressure on the table right now.
I mean, it's not the greatest pressure, but you know, 3/4 flyer and Restoration Angel and the Augur Bolus, that's more than what's on the other side of the board.
Certainly more operatively, we've got a lot of card advantage being gained by Raw. The Augur Bolus hitting and the Restoration Angel giving a nice Sphinx's Revelation, assuming he's able to keep making his land drops. Unfortunately for him, he does not have any more of those in his hand, meaning that we might be facing a discard right now, or at the very least, a Pillar of Flame that gets traded for 2 points of damage.
Yeah, so right now, Rodrigo Lopez is facing 2 attacking creatures, and he is currently at 13 life. Bruce Raw, 18. Looks like we have a turn and burn. It's going to turn and burn the Restoration Angel, but Bruce Raw has a response.
Now, one thing that you can't do is play another Restoration Angel to try and flicker your existing Restoration Angel due to the non-angel clause.
Is that the, do we call that the Oblivion Ring rules?
That is the, we don't like thinking about what happens when these guys blink one another too many times.
So there's a syncopate. That's going to stop the turn and burn from happening. Rodrigo Lopez is going to take 4, go down to 9. Goes his turn, plays a land, and he's going to throw out a Supreme Verdict.
And not a whole lot you can do about that. That turn and burn into Supreme Verdict, very effective at baiting the Syncopate out. Syncopate, of course, now unable to target Lopez's Aetherling. So he might be setting up that play once he gets a 7th land. Dissipate, of course, still in Raw's hand, so he's not entirely devoid of counter magic. He just needs to hit some more land drops.
Yes, he has quite the complement of spells. And you can see we're almost running out of room over on our cards in hand viewer for the 8 cards that he has in his hand. You think he's going to proactively use one of these cards in lieu of discarding?
Yeah, I think what you have to do is cycle the Azorius Charm here and see if you can draw yourself another land. That'll also allow you to flash back the Azorius Charm with Snapcaster Mage. The worst comes to worst, you can just Pillar of Flame your opponent and say go, but that's not ideal. I think you have to try and cycle Azorius Charm here, but that may not be what we see.
Or we can say Pillar of Flame your dome and go. At least you have both of the options covered.
Yeah, I mean, the reason that you don't Azorius Charm is presumably because if you don't rip a blue source, you aren't going to be able to dissipate the Aetherling that could hit right here. One line of thinking is, okay, if you don't hit lands, you're going to lose anyway, so you need to try to do that. But you can always simply just Azorius Charm at the end of the turn when the coast is clear for that Aetherling.
All right, so Lopez plays a land, passes the turn back to Bruce Raw. Let's see if he can rip a land, and it is a Supreme Verdict. Not a land.
So we might be seeing more blue, white, red control turning into a burn deck, with those Pillar of Flames getting sent straight to the face.
Well, Lopez is down to 7. Two more damage is down to 5. It's 1 less turn from, say, a Restoration Angel clock.
No, that's true. And also Snapcaster Mage in Raw's hand that can turn into another 2 damage. We assume War Leader's Helix is in the deck somewhere, Turn and Burn in the deck somewhere. 7 is not a very high life total.
Speaking of War Leader's Helix, and there's one from Lopez. That's going to bring him back up to 9. It's going to bring Bruce down to 14.
And that's also going to effectively counterspell those last 2 Pillars of Flame.
Untap for Lopez. Let's see what he can come up with. He has another land, so he is not having a shortage of land.
So we see Lopez just keeping lands after land coming. All of these matchups frequently in all formats boil down to who has access to the most available mana. It's Raw with the Sphinx's Revelations. Lopez, though, doesn't have that, but he does have an Aetherling, forcing Raw to keep several of his mana open. Snapcaster Mage can also generate an instant speed threat at any point in time if it needs to, as well as rebuy some of those earlier instances.
And there is a 6th land for Bruce Raw. He's going to play it untapped telegraphing many things, but most importantly, well, the 6th land was the most important, but an extra blue source, that gives him a lot of options.
Yeah, having that extra blue source means that it's easier to keep Dissipate mana up if he wants to do anything on his own turn. You also have to expect him to set up a Sphinx's Revelation. 3 cards is a lot of cards. It's going to help him hit additional land drops. It's going to pad his life total a little bit. And even if it gets countered, he's not going to be too upset about that.
Speaking of padding life totals, a second War Leader's Helix from Rodrigo Lopez is going to bring him up to 13 unless Bruce Raw has some response, and he doesn't. So that's going to bring him up to 13. Kind of a life total reversal here. Bruce Raw now at 8 life.
Yeah, and with him at 8, that Snapcaster Mage targeting one of those War Leaders helices can mean that if he attacks on his turn successfully, he gets Raw all the way down to 2 life, right in range of the Pillar of Flame that is already in Lopez's hand.
So there's the Azorius Charm to draw a card. And thumbs up from Lopez. Another Supreme Verdict.
So again, he's cycling, trying to hit more land drops, trying to get those Sphinx's Revelations as big as they possibly can be. He's got Snapcaster Mages in his hand, so it's unlikely that he's going to get hit by the 2-1 body from Lopez's own Snapcaster Mage. The question right now is, what's he going to do and how's he going to get ahead?
Well, first step seems to be Augur Bolus. Another thumbs up.
Anyway.
Let's see what we can get from here. We see a Think Twice and a Restoration Angel. Think Twice, the only card that we can pick, so Restoration Angel goes to the bottom along with a Sulfur Vent.
And that Think Twice is exactly what Raw wants to hit there. It gives him enough mana to play it and flash it back without having to burn one of his Sphinx's Revelations. Again, just letting him hit more and more land drops.
And speaking of flash it back, I'm going to have to dramatic pause because I don't know what the target was, but something will probably be flashed back if this Snapcaster Mage resolves.
Yeah, and I would guess that it's going to be a War Leader's Helix. With how aggressively he was throwing those helices at Raw's face, you have to expect his plan to be, all right, I'm going to burn you out.
Considering the Dissipate, seems like Bruce Raw has put it to the front of his hand.
Yeah, unfortunately.
And what Lopez ultimately wants to do is force Raw to use his counterspell so that Lopez can force through that Aetherling. By pressuring Raw's life total, he forces Raw to use counter magic on threats that ordinarily wouldn't be that relevant in this matchup, opening up the threats that are going to put the game away. And that's exactly what he's trying to do with Aetherling. Given that he's not in a position to fight a fight over Sphinx's Revelation, as he doesn't have any of those or any counter spells in his hand.
So it looks like the Snapcaster Mage does resolve, and as you hinted earlier, well, I would say the third War Leader's Helix, but it was just the first or the second one being flashed back, threatening to cut Bruce Raw's life total in half.
So Raw has the option of countering that Helix. Given that's happening, he also had the option to counter the Snapcaster Mage, but he also wants...
We hear that Raw did an actual facepalm at the Helix. I guess he didn't get quite a good look at Lopez's graveyard before not dissipating it.
Right, and it would be awkward if Raw had to dissipate the Helix without having to dissipate the Mage. On the other hand, he does ensure that Lopez taps low, and if you made a mistake, and it's, again, not entirely clear that it is a mistake at this point, yeah, he's going to decide to just let it resolve. But even if he said, oh, I should have dissipated the Snapcaster Mage, if the correct play is to dissipate the Helix at that point, and sometimes that's just what you have to do.
Right. Life totals now will be Lopez at 17, Bruce Raw at 4. But that doesn't mean that Bruce Raw is really losing this game. The board's relatively even, and he still has 2 Sphinx's Revelations in his hand.
Exactly. Lopez has got a Pillar of Flame in his hand, but he can't really get through that Augur of Bolus in order to deal the final 2 damage. Even if he could, Raw could Sphinx's Revelation for 2 cards and, more importantly, 2 life remaining in this game.
Yeah, I mean, it was a really awkward game to... A really awkward hand.
So right now, Lopez just trying to figure out what to do. He's got another Land of the Sulfur Falls in his hand. Doesn't really want to jam Aetherling. Given that Raw sat and thought for a long time about that Helix, he has got to suspect that Raw has a counterspell.
There's a Think Twice from Bruce Raw. Resolves. Draws a Dissipate, so
was like,
Has
no.
2 dissipates now.
But I made the mistake of looking at
Handful
the
of permission in the War Leader's Helix.
Yeah, with that War Leader's Helix and the additional card from Think Twice, we might be seeing this game start to turn around for Raw. Raw able to pad his life total back with the War Leader's Helix. Lopez not able to put anything together, doesn't have a lot of velocity, doesn't have access to any card drawing at this point in the game. And Raw with 2 dissipates has a little bit more, or I guess he have 2 dissipates?
He does have 2
What do you have?
dissipates. He just drew 1, and he had the one that he did not counter the Snapcaster Maze with.
Okay, so with access to multiple counter magic, plus his own Snapcaster Mage, his 4 life might be a little bit safer than it would ordinarily. That said, he can't drop his shields for fear of that Aetherling hitting the table. Aetherling, essentially a threat that you cannot deal with at all in this matchup.
If Bruce Raw decides not to play a spell this turn, he will have to discard. But he does have a couple of Supreme Verdicts, which probably aren't doing much in this matchup.
That's true. Yeah, you can easily discard the Supreme Verdict. You could theoretically discard the Think Twice because it has flashback, but you probably don't want to do that. Every single card is precious in a matchup like this.
Looks like all efforts have been combined on this red, white, blue matchup as the entire team is conferring with the players. So we are now in 4v4 mode for this game that we're watching.
And that is the advantage of having your team around here. I mean, a blue-white-red mirror is not an easy matchup to play. And so having a lot of heads to help you rethink your lines, especially when every point of damage matters, and especially with either player tapping out, is in danger of just losing the game right now to either a burn spell or a Sphinx's Revelation. It's good to have some extra eyes on the board.
Yeah, so it looks like Bruce Raw did just pass the turn and discard one of those Supreme Verdicts, and I think Lopez picked up a Pillar of Flame right now. We're getting a good view of his shoulder and not a lot of hand. There we go, double clip Pillar of Flame to go with his Supreme Verdict, Aetherling, and Sulphur Falls.
Now, Pillar of Flame, not a card that's traditionally pretty good in this matchup. On the other end, your opponent at 4 life, it's a lot better than it could be under other circumstances.
That is correct.
Now, and even if it gets countered, forcing your opponent to tap out could allow you to stick an Aetherling here.
More Pillar of Flames to the face as Bruce Raw is going down to 2 life unless he decides to interact with this Pillar of Flames.
Yeah, you saw Raw say, "Oh, do you want a Pillar of Flame my Augur Bolas?" The entire Chilean team said, "No,"
yes.
points at Raw.
And there is the second Pillar of Flame. So obviously, unless Bruce Raw wants to lose his game right now, something has to happen.
So we're going to expect either a life gain spell in response or a counter spell right now. Again, like we saw earlier, the War Leader's Helix essentially able to undo all of the damage that these pillars are doing right here.
So this Helix is pointing at Lopez, you know.
Yeah, and what's happening right here is that Raw is able to still keep 3 mana up for Dissipate. So Lopez not really expecting that second pillar to kill his opponent, but he's unable to get ahead on the board position because Raw still has a counterspell for that Aetherling.
These really aren't the 2-for-1s we're used to seeing.
I'm not used to this matchup devolving into a burn to the face war.
Encroaching Ruins comes down for Bruce Raw, another M14 card.
Yeah, that's the 4 and a tap, destroy a non-basic land, I believe. So
yes,
a little more
it
expensive
is.
than Wasteland, but you know, it gets the job done when you need it to.
Looks like there was a Dissipate picked up for Lopez. Plays the Sulphur Falls he had for a while. Some hand flicking, probably some Spanish communication going on to decide exactly what the next course of action is, because Bruce Raw, he's at 4. That's pretty close. That's 1 Aetherling attack.
Yeah, it's 1 Aetherling attack, and importantly for Raw, it's 1 War Leader's Helix, or 1 more Snapcaster Mage, since there's yet another Helix in the graveyard. Raw desperately wants to cast one of those Sphinx's Revelations, or at the very least think twice. But if he taps out, he is living very, very dangerously. So that's why I expect to see a little bit more just incremental advantage. Sorry, it's not a think twice since he had a Snapcaster Mage. So despite those 2 dissipates, it's really hard for him to get ahead with a Revelation right now. We might see that Desolate Lighthouse start to do some work.
Is this a game that Lopez and the Chileans think could be slipping away right now?
I think so, and the reason I think you see that is this Aetherling right here. They are tapping 6 mana to cast Aetherling. They're protecting it with 1 Dissipate. They're essentially putting the entire game on the line here, betting that Raw does not have a pair of counterspells, or alternatively, a counterspell and a Snapcaster Mage that can flash 1 back.
So here is 1 counterspell, Dissipate, targeting the Aetherling. And we have to expect a fight here.
Right, exactly. This is some old school Magic right here. We're seeing a proper counterspell war over an endgame threat. This is taking me back to like 2005, Rashad.
To counterspells and Morphlings?
Yeah. Counterspells and Kega the Tide Star.
We could class that up a little bit. We could get better win conditions than that.
We've leveled up a little bit since then, despite the mythic dragons in Modern Masters. All right,
so this is a Snapcaster Mage, which is probably better than just a Dissipate.
Right, it's a little bit more mana efficient. I think what he's going for is a Syncopate for 2, so he can keep Dissipate, the hard counter, in his hand. The only card really that Lopez could show him right now that would ruin Raw's day is a Dispel, and even then Raw would be able to use that Supreme Verdict since Lopez would be tapped out.
And the 2/1 body has to be pretty nice too. And it looks like the Syncopate went for the Dissipate so that the Snapcaster Mages later in this game don't have a target.
Right, exiling cards very relevant in a matchup with as much recursion as this one. But you see Raw 4 life right now, free to resolve a Sphinx's Revelation. The only thing he has to worry about right now is if Lopez has another Aetherling.
And there is a Sphinx's Revelation for 5, looks like. Not afraid of a Dispel? I mean, is that not a card that you want to try to play around?
I think you would have expected to see a Dispel in that last counter war, and he doesn't have to fear the other Aetherling after all, because he's looked at, with access to the deck list, Lopez only has 1 Aetherling in his deck, so there are no more of those where that came from.
I'm not sure if these players have access to the deck list, because it's more of a Swiss tournament.
Okay,
it's not. Yeah, this is more standardized as far as.
So it's not like the World Championships where the players know each other's decks. So Raw doesn't know that Lopez doesn't have another Aetherling, but in reality, he does not have another Aetherling. So no more of those to have to worry about if you're Raw, and you're free to tap out and draw 1,000,000 cards.
So a Pillar of Flame used as creature elimination. That's weird.
Well, Raw's trying to get aggressive now with his Snapcaster Mage and his Augur of Bolas.
Got to clear the way for that 1/3.
And, yeah, his Supreme Verdict still able to take care of the threats. You see him about to cast the Augur of Bolas. He's like, do I want to wipe the board first?
Yeah, I think one of his teammates may have asked, do you want to wipe the board first? And collectively, they decide that Augur of Bolas is the better play.
Yeah, I mean, Augur essentially stops this offense right here. There's no need to Sphinx's Revelation, or no need to Supreme Verdict. You want to keep your mana open for Sphinx's Revelation, which is exactly what he draws. And suddenly, we are back into a game of Magic for both of these players.
That was a great hit off of Augur of Bolas with the perfect amount of mana. Obviously, any amount of mana is the perfect amount of mana for a Sphinx's Revelation. But 5 cards, 5 life. This is, I mean, we're back at the square one that we were when we came in to watching this game.
That's exactly right. I thought Lopez was falling further and further behind, cards leaving his hand, no way to get card advantage. But a Sphinx's Revelation for 5, and suddenly this is anybody's ball game.
So, let's see. Bruce Raw is going to untap. And what will Raw do? He also has another Sphinx's Revelation. Is this the time where you just try to bury your opponent in cards? You can't keep them all, but you can select the 7 best.
Yeah, well, this is the time where you want Reliquary Tower. Just kind of have your cake and eat it too. I don't think you tap out for a Revelation here. You have Is It Charm to slightly fight other non-creature spells. You have Snapcaster Mage to get something back. You can play another Augur of Bolas to start attacking 2 Augurs into Lopez's 1 Augur. What he doesn't have is a Restoration Angel able to get through damage in the air, so we just see him commit another Augur to the board.
There's the Augur. Let's see if we can hit something sweet.
Is that what we're going to do?
Well, I mean, that's pretty sweet.
That's not bad.
Sphinx's Revelations for everyone.
So now we see a Revelation in Raw's grip. We see a pair of Supreme Verdicts and a Restoration Angel in Lopez's. So despite drawing 5 cards, we don't really see a whole lot of action on Lopez's end. He's got a Restoration Angel, he's got a removal spell, but what he doesn't have is more card drawing or counter spells, and those are what you want in this matchup.
So another Augur Bolas for Lopez. And remember I mentioned earlier that we had all 4 of the members kind of all working together on this one game.
Oh, yeah.
Well, that's because Tapia already won 2-0 over Leach, and we are holding the Wright-Castillo match until this game is done. Funny thing is, Andrew Wright mulled to 5.
Oh, no.
So he's kind of sitting there sweating it out. so that once this is done, we can go over there and hope that he can make a game of his 5-card hand.
Every once in a while, you draw 5 really good cards.
So there's a lot of flag waving going on right now. You guys can't get to see it, but I can feel the patriotism.
Such love.
There's a Supreme Verdict. Quite the board wipe in the blue, white, red flash mirror. A 3 for 2. You don't see that a lot in the control and control mirror matches from a Supreme Verdict.
Right, and that allows Lopez to stick a Augur Bolas. As silly as it is to say that Augur representing a 9-turn clock right now, that's kind of what counts as being aggressive. And both of these players really don't have access to that many more ways to end the game in their decks. So anything really works. That said, Raw 9 is a whole lot different from the 2 life he was at earlier. So it's going to be a long uphill battle for that Augur.
Now, Lopez actually picked up a syncopate, so that would be pretty good against any large numbered Sphinx's Revelations.
Yeah, and it looks like he has his own Sphinx's Revelation, at least according to the data I'm looking at, meaning that he has card drawing and counter spells, which are the things that matter. He just doesn't have a lot of both. And he's a little bit behind on available mana right now, so it's going to be hard to leverage either of those cards.
We're all staring at a Supreme Verdict, probably counting his hand, getting that ready to get discarded. But he has 7, so he can pass the turn back to Lopez. And Lopez picks up a second Sphinx's Revelation of his own, which would be the 3rd for him of this game. Attacks with the Augur. It's going to bring Bruce down to 8.
Yeah, and 2 Sphinx's Revelation means that Raw's 1 Dissipate is not going to cut it. He still has a Snapcaster Mage and an Izzet Charm for if Lopez taps too low. Also his own pair of Sphinx's Revelations, but again, no obligation to do anything just yet. Lopez also can start threatening a much quicker clock with a Restoration Angel at instant speed, and while Raw has a Supreme Verdict, that's not going to save him for getting hit for at least 3 damage.
Raw draws a card off of a Think Twice at the end of Lopez's turn and makes his land drop, passes it back to Lopez, and he is in the red zone or the orangish zone with that Augur Bolas.
So what it looks like Lopez is trying to do is get Raw within range of a single hit from Augur plus Restoration Angel, because what that means is that Raw will have to use valuable counterspells on that Angel, setting Lopez up for a Sphinx's Revelation that can really push this game away.
Looks like Bruce Raw wants to cast something. He's ordering his mana. Is it going to be a Sphinx's Revelation?
Or is he activating Desperate Lighthouse, perhaps, and trying to cycle through to find something?
A little bit of a life total straighten outing between the players. There was some confusion. They got it fixed. And obviously pointing at the Supreme Verdict as the #1 choice to be discarded.
And getting rid of Verdict, obviously it's not terribly good in this particular game state. It does mean he has to be incredibly careful about a Restoration Angel because 7 is only a couple attacks.
Speaking of Restoration Angel, are you some type of fortune teller? You always say the card right before it pops up.
I'm a time scientist.
Are you a time scientist?
I am. There are not many of me.
You need to teach me some time science. 'Cause I'm often late for places. And there is that Restoration Angel jumping in the way of an Augur Bolas.
And we might see ourselves another counter war here. On one hand, it doesn't matter a whole lot because Lopez has his own Restoration Angel. On the other hand, getting that Augur eaten is not really thrilling for him. That said, Syncopate, not the best way to counter a spell when your opponent has 8 mana open, so Lopez might just have to deal with this reality right here.
I believe he might have a Dissipate. He only has the
He only has
syncopate.
syncopate. He does have Celestial Flare, which could do the job right here. Again, it all depends on how much he's willing to fight over and how low he's willing to tap his mana.
So Celestial Flare is the play, and now there could be a fight over the Celestial Flare. And it looks like Dissipate is coming to the top of Raw's hand.
Yeah, I think if you're Raw, you just sort of allow this to happen. You don't really care too much about that Angel. You have bigger fights to fight. I think you might even want to try and fire off a small Sphinx's Revelation to bait a counterspell for your opponent. I mean, you have to assume with all of these draws happening where you haven't put pressure on your opponent that they're likely to have several removal spells. So
So it looks like he goes with the Dissipate.
And that means that his only counterspells are Syncopate and Izzet Charm, neither of which are hard counters. Again, a Snapcaster Mage can turn into a hard counter, but that is not very cheap to do.
I have something to tell you, Zach Hill, which may break your heart.
Oh, yeah?
After this little counter war exchange of instants, we're going to leave this game, and we're going to go to the back table and watch the red-green on a red-green mirror match. And I promise you, viewers and listeners, and you,
And
Zach
me
Hill,
personally,
yes,
Zach Hill,
that the Lopez Raw game will probably still be going on. So
is this like the Groundhog Day of Magic games?
Well, I love Groundhog Game, and this is still game 1. So there's at least going to be a game 2 unless the Wright and Castillo match ends the actual team round.
Or if the players just can't handle it anymore.
Well,
They're
you
just
know,
like,
I mean...
nope, too many Sphinx's Revelations.
Raw looks a little disheveled, just a little bit. It's wearing down on them, and we've gotten the feature match area a little bit cooler, so I'd have to think that if this were yesterday and this game was this long, someone would give up.
It's less of an endurance contest than it was yesterday. Yeah, there's no way to really capture the gallons and gallons of sweat that were dripping down on the arena floor yesterday.
I think Craig Gibson might have been able to capture a little bit of that.
Oh, yeah?
Not in the fashion that you mentioned, but, you know, a little more artsy.
So again, we're simply seeing this. We're seeing this fight or this attempted fight.
There's still a Dissipate on the stack, targeting what I believe is a Celestial Flare.
That is what I believe is happening as well. And a Turnin' Bird in Lopez's hand, waiting to roast that Angel if he ends up losing this fight. The challenge, of course, is just deciding what you care about. BDM expressing his wish that we reprinted Wing Shards so that multiple copies could go on the stack, and we don't have to worry about any of this.
And just end it all. Just end it all. That creature, was it attacking? It's dead.
Yeah, not anymore. Caw.
There's a syncopate
my Wing Shards
for most of his mana. Can't quite see how much it is, but I would assume it's 1 more than the mana that Bruce Raw has available. And a syncopate back for 2.
All right, so these players really want to fight over this existing board state in this Augur. What that means is that Raw now has an uncontested threat, but it also means he doesn't have a lot in the way of defense. And again, Sphinx's Revelation can render all of the jockeying over these life totals essentially irrelevant. Players are, however, almost out of threats.
Will Restoration Angel take it all the way? We may never know. But right now, we are gonna go back to the back table and watch the red-green on the red-green mirror match between Roberto Castillo and Andrew Wright. So right now, we got to look at Castillo and Wright. Wright's down to 5 cards. You see a Volcanic Strength. That's a pretty good sideboard card, or if it's a one of main deck card, that is great in this matchup. Might be enough to make this 5-card hand winnable, right?
Yeah, I think so. Certainly, it's going to be a quicker match.
I syncopated the syncopate, and I dissipated.
Very friendly handshake in the beginning, and we should be off.
So it went away.
And we're almost off.
So for a 5-card hand, I mean, it's got what you want to see. It's got Volcanic Strength, which can win a race and is kind of a plan in of itself. Again, when you bring in Volcanic Strength, you're saying you don't really care too much about card advantage in the first place. You expect it to be out of range of your opponent's burn. You're just trying to end the game as quickly as possible. So it's the kind of card that is conducive to a mulligan. On the other hand, no targets for it right now. So this might be a very rapid game.
Well, right now we only have an arrow for Castillo, and there was no turn 2 play, so attack for 1. Not really blinding fast, but Castillo does have 3 mana, and there's a wealth of things that can be done for 4.
Yeah, including this, I believe I see a Huntmaster of the Fells. I believe I see a Gore Clan Rampager, and it's Huntmaster that he ends up going with.
So Huntmaster comes down, as does a 2/2 Wolf token. It's going to go up to 22 life. Andrew Wright, not a lot going on. He only has 2 land. He already mulliganed to 5. He has a Volcanic Strength in his hand. No targets as of yet. He has a Domri Raid, which doesn't interact well with this board. It could draw him a card in his only turn 3 play. Is that what he does here?
I think you might. I mean, what you don't want is for that Huntmaster to flip. So at the very least, it's going to save you essentially 6 life because you're not getting hit with the flip effect of the Huntmaster and potentially draw you a card. So you can do a lot worse than 3 mana, gain 6, draw a card. But missing on the Domri, huge there, as Domri's going to put him essentially down 1 more card after a mulligan to 5.
4th land for Castillo, and he's tapped his mana pretty fast. I don't know if he has a Thundermaw Hellkite. He must not, because it would be on the battlefield right now.
Yeah, well, we see a Zealous Conscripts, which could theoretically steal Domri. Could also simply attack for 3, although it's probably not the use you want to get out of it. You could try and draw a card off the Domri ability, but then you're giving it additional loyalty. I think you probably just attack with what's on the board, say go, and try to flip your Huntmaster.
Yeah, there's also a Flint Hoof Boar in Castillo's hand, so that's another way just to keep aggressive, and it looks like that's going to be his play.
Yeah, playing the board, definitely not bad. I almost would rather just flip my Huntmaster. That's 2 damage then plus 2 damage on the next turn, which essentially compensates, assuming all goes well, for the 3 Flint Hoof Boar damage. On the other end, it means you have to cast the boar next turn, so certainly there's nothing wrong with hitting your opponent upside the head before they can muster any kind of defense.
So there is a Gore Clan Rampager for Andrew Wright, his first actual creature play of the game, but against this board of 4 creatures for Castillo, it's not looking very good, especially with the Zealous Conscript in Castillo's hand.
Yeah, and I think that's exactly what we're about to see. I mean, there's nothing else that's really on the level of taking your opponent's 1 blocker, hitting them for 7, and turning the rest of your creatures sideways.
I've lost many limited games in this fashion. But it's good to know that it's great and constructed as well. And that is 15 damage, and Roberto Castillo wins a quick one for the team and wins the match for Castillo. And they did not even finish game 1 in the middle table before their teammates decided the match. You think they're going to finish playing it out for fun?
For fun.
Yeah.
That's one way of describing what's happening, yes.
We're done here, hey?
I mean, Magic is fun.
Hey, man, I love playing Magic. I like Psychotog mirrors, too, so I guess I'm not one to talk.
Wait, with or without upheaval?
You don't need upheaval.
I know, but, you know, I just want to know which ones you like better.
No, dog. 2 Psychotog counter spells. That's all a man needs.
Oh, you are a real man. Back in the booth for Rashad Miller, Zach Hill. Should we talk about that middle match again, or should we talk about the exciting matches? But while we set up, because we're going to talk with Team Chile in just a bit, but...
I mean, to me, like, the thing to think about with that blue-white-red mirror match is just how much was happening that was not happening. Neither player could commit to a threat, whether it's a huge Sphinx's Revelation or an Aetherling, because you're always having to think about, okay, how many counters can my opponent have? What can my opponent retaliate with if I choose to have a fight over this particular card? How many threats do I have left? Again, with Supreme Verdict, it's not inconceivable to kill literally every one of your opponent's threats. So what's interesting to me is the space between the cards that are cast and the reasoning behind the decisions and behind what to prioritize when. So an incredibly interesting match, even if all that happened was each player getting back to an equilibrium point and not able to really get ahead.
Now, back in the last Pro Tour that we were at, which was Pro Tour Dragon's Maze, there was a lot of similar mirrors, and we never really saw the long, drawn-out games. Usually, an Aetherling comes down, and it's hard either for it to get countered or because once it hits play, you're not going to. It's very hard to deal with. What's different about standard Aethelings versus block constructor Aethelings?
Well, I think there are two key things. The first is Snapcaster Mage. Snapcaster Mage allows there to be essentially just more virtual hard counters because, you know, over little things, as we saw, you can cycle your Snapcaster to get back, you know, a syncopate something, not have to use, you don't have dissipate and block, but you have counterflux, which can do similar things.
Basically the same thing.
Right, but you don't have to worry about those. You have Quiescence, too, that can also counter something. But the idea is you don't have as many virtual copies of that, so you can't fight as many fights. People are also just playing 3 and 4 Aetherlings in the block constructed Pro Tour because you didn't have these cards like Augur, Bolus, and Snapcaster and Restoration Angel to essentially end a game. What that means is an Aetherling sticks and the game ends a lot faster than what we're seeing in Standard.
All right, we're ready for the interview. Let's talk with Team Chile, and Brian David Marshall.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the feature match area. We just saw Team Chile win over Team South Africa. Two matches to an incompleted match in the middle. I'm here with Rookie of the Year, Felipe Tapia Bechera, Fabian Lucero, Roberto Castillo, and Rodrigo Lopez. Yeah. So tell us a little bit about your tournament so far.
What's that?
He wants you.
Tell us how the tournament's been going for your team.
We started with a strong 3-0 in the limited portion for M14. Then we got a little shaky in standard and ended 2-2 in standard, but that was enough to get us to day 2. Then we had faith to have a good performance again in limited because we have Rodrigo here, who is pretty much, I would say, the best limited player we have in Chile. So it was a luxury to have him on our team. And we went 2-1 because we decided to keep the first seed by drawing the last round of limited. So we ended up 4th in the general standings, and we played this match recently and we won, so we're still alive for top 8.
Amazing.
So tell me, sitting here with the Rookie of the Year, what has it meant for Magic players in your country to see his success on the Pro Tour?
Well, it gave us someone close. You see him, you can see him in the store or somewhere in tournaments, local tournaments, and he's there just like me. I can be in the Pro Tour too, maybe just a little effort, teamwork. I don't know. It's really exciting. We're all a little bit touched because of the success we have achieved. We dreamed about this, but we didn't expect it to this kind of success in the tournament.
Well, it's been amazing to watch you guys. Amazing to watch your run. This is Team Chile. Oh, hold on one second.
We would like to say hello to some people in Spanish. Nos gustaría agradecer, por ejemplo, a Jorge Peñailillo.
Jorge Penanillo nos auspició a los 3, nos pasó a cada uno una polera. Yo no la traje porque no quería estar con la polera de nuevo. Estaba sucia.
Jorge Peñailillo was very gentle, was very good, nice to us, and he sponsored the team, and we would like to thank him and remind the Magic community that we have a Grand Prix. He's organizing it, so it will be awesome.
I was in Chile for a Grand Prix. It was awesome. So if you get a chance to be there, you should. Team Chile, Brian David Marshall, back to the booth.
You know, I know Jorge Peñailillo.
Oh yeah,
I can't pronounce his last name, but I
but you know that guy.
Yeah, he's actually a level 2 Magic judge.
Oh, that's awesome.
And he's judged a lot of Pro Tours.
Really?
And he's at GPs and everything. So like, very touching, great. Rodrigo Lopez, best limited player in Chile.
Yeah,
that's
awesome.
That's awesome.
It
All
is.
right. That's enough of gushing over Team Chile. Let's send it back to the news desk so you can see what happened in the rest of the round.
Thank you, Zach and Rashad. I'm Marshall back at the news desk. Now, that was the first round of Standard here from the World Magic Cup. things are going to start getting shaken up as far as the standings go. I have Rich Hagen at the wall to give us a briefing on what's happened here in the first round of Unified Standard. Rich, what do we got?
Marshall, thanks so much. We're here at the big board. 4 pools to give you. Let's go straight to pool number 1. Up we come. Ireland, Belarus, Estonia and Hungary. And you see it's the bottom 2 seeds that are won. Estonia defeated Ireland. Now don't panic, Ireland fans. Your boys lost the first round of the morning, came back to win the next 2. And because they were and are the top seed in the pool, if they win their next 2, they will go through. So Ireland 0-1, that was their loss to give. Meanwhile, Estonia and Hungary win. Hungary 2-0 over Belarus. That is great news for the Hungarian team. Belarus, you've got the likes of Yevgeny Zakharenkov, Ihar Kleonski, Ihar Polshak in that team. And they are now struggling at 0-1. Let's take you to pool number 2. Who have we got? Well, it's the overall number 2 seed, France, Iceland, Greece and Israel. The middle 2 have won in pool number 2. Greece took out France by 2-1. That's Simon Berthieu, Raf Levy leading the French team. You'll see him in a moment doing a deck tech with the French team with their Team Unified Standard decks. Meanwhile, Iceland 2-0 over Israel. Now remember, Israel were a bottom seed last pool, but still made it in at 2-1. Again, they've started off with a loss. Now they're going to have to work their way through. And I believe, I'm hearing in my ear that Israel-France is coming soon. That's going to be a massive match. Levy, Shenhar, huge stuff in that one as the team leaders. Let's take you to pool number 3. There you see it. Now, this is getting a little bit complicated. The good news, first of all, if you're a fan of Team Brazil, this is Enzo Real, Carlos Devi Montenegro, and of course, Alison Abe and Willie Adel. They have won their first round. They're a number 2 seed, but the thing that's making it complicated, 2 of the other powerhouses in this incredibly strong pool, Austria and Belgium, have drawn, so they get 1 point each, and that means they're now looking to go to 4 and 7. It will really mess with the math. Huge implications there. Ukraine, bottom seed, 0-1. Now it's out of their hands. They have to hope Yuri Babic and co, with his more than 50 lifetime pro points, he has to hope that with Mike Krasnitsky and friends, they can win their last 2 and then see what happens from there. We have one more pool to bring you. It's pool number 4, Chile. You've seen already in feature match action, they are winners. What a great bunch of guys. Developing story. Because they're the top seed, a win in either of their last 2 matches, Chile will be in the top 8 tomorrow on Super Sunday, the best day of Magic we've ever seen. Czech Republic 0-1, South Africa 0-1, and New Zealand, Walker McMurdo, they've been coming up on the rails very quietly, not seen a lot of them this weekend so far. You may be about to see a lot more of them. They're a bottom seed, but they're on top of the pool right now alongside Chile, and I believe Chile-New Zealand will be in their very near future. So Marshall, that's pretty much where we are. As you can see, the round is done, so I'm going to hand back to you, and soon it'll be time for a deck tech.
Hey, thanks, Rich. Wow, a lot of stuff going on out there on the tournament floor, and we're going to be seeing a lot of it pare down as we go. Only 2 more rounds left in Unified Standard, working towards the cut. Now, we have a deck tech for you. Rich just mentioned that right now. It's a pretty sweet one from Hall of Famer Rafael Levy. He's at the wall right now with Hall of Famer-elect Luis Scott Vargas. Let's see some cards here.